Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Into the Hive Mind. Today I have a very exciting video where I'm just going to be going over the Olympus Games GT in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I have a very special guest here today, friend and teammate Ben Neal. The two of us did rather well in the event, taking first and second place. And we managed to do so with Tyranid and Tau, which is definitely grabbing a lot of people's attention.
Top tier meta.
First off, just some quick details about the event. COVID restrictions are starting to lax up, but they're not gone completely. So the event was capped at 36 players. The TOs for the event were some wonderful guys named Kyle and Kevin. They own the Olympus Games gaming store up in Cheyenne. And originally the event was just going to be an RTT, but because demand was so high, they ended up actually purchasing a venue to hold the event at. Instead, and they turned the event into a 2-day GT. Unfortunately, this did lead to some weird tables that kind of had a lack of, not terrain, but obscuring terrain. And actually half of the tables were on 6x4 mats instead of the new 5x4.5. But we were just happy to be able to play in a big event, and we got to have 36 people finally playing and played 5 rounds. So it was pretty fun. I'll go over my list and my matchups, and then since everyone was so interested in the Tau as well, Ben will then follow after me. So basically I brought Kraken Tyranids. The whole list was built around the Harriden, which I'm sure some of you have seen.
The old Harry Dan.
Yeah. He's pretty good, and with the being able to give him the dermic symbiosis for a 5-up invuln and counting as having double wounds, that means he needs to take 26 wounds before he actually degrades. And it turned out most of my opponents decided they couldn't do 26 wounds in one turn, so they weren't even going to bother, and they shot other stuff. But the list was the Harriden with, and then a battalion of Swarmlord, Broodlord with Resonance Barb, 2 units of 20 Devour Termagants, and a unit of 3 Rippers, unit of 4 Rippers, 2 Lictors because they're just amazing at grabbing those secondaries, and 2 Demacarons just to really put on the pressure. Demacarons combined with Kraken and Swarmlord are just really in your face, and so all my opponents ended up shooting at the Demacarons instead of the Harriden.
A little bit easier to kill.
Little bit. Without being -1 to hit, 1 less toughness, and half the wounds. So it makes sense going after the Demacarons, but in every matchup that I had, that basically resulted in the Harriden living to the point where I was able to kill off anything that could really threaten it in the first turn or two. But basically my turn 1 matchup was against Blood Angels. Good guy, but basically he got first turn. He only had 3 Eradicators in the list, and everything else was close combat. So his turn 1, he moved forward, double moved some Death Company to charge into my Gaunt screen, and then killed the Gaunts, but he was then sitting in midfield where my entire army could charge him.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Well, I basically charged right into him and dealt the killing blow essentially turn 1. I killed off the vast majority of the Death Company. I killed off the Eradicators, all of his infiltrators. He was basically left with just his the Golden Boys. Sanguinary Guard, thank you. He was just left with a squad of 10 Sanguinary Guard and some Intercessors, which after turn 1, that's a pretty brutal blow, and was a fairly easy mop-up for the rest of the game. Game 2 was against Salamanders, where we ended up on Hammer and Anvil deployment, and this was on one of the 4x6s, so we started really far away from each other. He had a bunch of the ATVs, which I know Ben really likes with his Dark Angel lists, but ATVs and attack bikes, which are pretty standard now for Space Marines, as well as some Eradicators. So he had plenty of Salamander Meltas, which I was a little afraid of, but because we were Hammer and Anvil and so far apart, I was actually able to deploy the Harriden out of range turn 1. And because of that, my opponent he got to finish deploying after me, but he deployed super defensively with all of his Meltas in the back corner. and then he rolled and won the turn for first and had to go first and decided he didn't want to leave his castle, so he did nothing turn 1.
Probably the right call.
Yeah, no, I don't blame him for. He was very well set up to be defensive, but it meant that the Harriden you can't really hide from, because I just flew 50 inches up the table, and then with 48-inch guns, used the pathogenic slime to pump myself up to 4 damage, and shot everything into the ATVs, and managed to kill all 3 of them, which definitely cut down on that threat. I also double moved the Dima, basically right in his face. I didn't really do any damage with him, but he had to choose between either killing that Dima, who's right in his deployment zone, or start shooting the Harriden. He elected to go for the Dima. He did kill it, but that meant he didn't do anything to the Harriden, and the Harriden then landed and mopped up his whole army.
Yeah.
So that was round 2. Round 3 was against Custodes, which Ben's Custodes list is normally 2 Telemons, which in the couple times I've played against him, I just bounce right off of him. Because your favorite strats for the Telemons, you want to tell them what those strats are?
Well, 1 CP, -1 strength, which is great against Democarons, because they're strength 8. So now they wound the toughness 8 Telemon on 5s. Now, normally, Democarons, they reroll hits. 1 CP, they reroll wounds. But then there's a 2 CP Custodes strat that just says no rerolls.
So, yeah, that combined with the 4-up invuln on the Telemon normally means I get about 1 wound through for 3 plus D3 damage, -1 because he's a Dreadnought, and I do about 4 wounds to him.
6 up, feel no pain.
Which then goes to about 3 wounds, and then the Telemon just punches the Dima and takes out over half. Sometimes if he really spikes, can just kill it in 1 punch. So the Harridens, honestly, I kind of took it because in one of the first practice games that we did against his Telemons, I found out the Harriden can kill Telemons no problem because he's strength 10, so -1 strength doesn't matter. He doesn't have rerolls to begin with, so that doesn't matter.
Need him, yeah.
And you can pump the flat damage up to 4, which then just gets reduced back down to 3, and on average, you actually one-shot a Telemon.
Yeah. And in melee, he's damage 6.
Yeah,
which goes down to 5, which is
still plenty
a lot,
against a 13 wound Dreadnought. So, anyways, that's basically exactly what happened. My opponent had a very similar list to what Ben likes to play with Custodes of 2 Telemons and then a bunch of. He did have the Venatari, which I mean were good, but not good enough for when he was already playing that far down. I essentially blew up a Telemon turn 1 and used the Gaunts to wrap the other Telemon for basically the entirety of the game. And yeah, there was just really nothing the Custodes player had to even remotely hurt the Harriden.
He did not have a lot of guns, and if the Harriden's flying, then it's hard to deal with it.
I stayed in the air until his Terminators, which were really the Terminators and Telemons were taken care of, and once those were gone, all he had left were Venatari and Sword and Shield troop units, which are only strength 5, can't really hurt the Harriden that well. So that game was pretty easy for me. So then I finished day 1 3-0. Why don't you talk about your day 1 and then we'll bounce back for day 2.
Oh yeah, so my round 1 was actually against the same Custodes player that Matt had played round 3. It was super close game. It's one of my toughest matchups.
Yeah, why don't you go over what your list is?
Yeah, I can go over my list. So I've got Tau. It's a mix between Farsight and Viorla. The Viorla detachment, it's really tiny. I've got Anshi, 10 Breachers with a missile pod turret, 2 units of 4 Vespid, and a Devilfish. That detachment is really, it's just to get an Ethereal into the army, and then the double shoot stratagem for Viorla lets the Breachers shoot twice at the closest target for 2 CP. So that can come in really clutch against, say, like Dark Eldar, where it's a ton of strength 5 and 6 shots coming out against all these little bodies. It's also good against Space Marines because it's AP -2 if they're in close range, or for 1 CP at their full range of 15. Most of the list, however, was Farsight. So I had Commander Farsight, of course, because he gives you the second Mod Ka, which is 2 turns of fallback and shoot, which is really how Tau needs to play, because you're going to get tagged by something. So you need that fallback and shoot, and having 2 turns of it, or 1 turn of Kayan for reroll hits, and 1 of fallback and shoot is really where you want to be. My second HQ was just a normal commander. He had 3 cyclic ion and the advanced targeting, so extra AP. He's just a beat stick. There's a 1 CP strat for Farsight to reroll all wound rolls. So he's hitting on 2s, rerolling, wounding on 4s or 3s most of the time, rerolling. So he was killing lots of stuff every turn.
Especially those Marines.
Yeah, absolutely. He's really good against Dark Angels too, with Transhuman. Does reroll wounds.
That's how you do it.
Yep. I had another 10-man Breacher squad. Farsight, they had no upgrades. They were just OBSEC troops. Gave them a Devilfish as well. Then I had a Riptide with the Ion Accelerator, 2 Fusion Blasters, Velocity Tracker, and Counterfire. So the Counterfire is reroll hit rolls in Overwatch, which usually bumps him up to about 3 hits between his Melta and his big gun, which is not bad.
Definitely scary.
Yeah. It's really good at just kind of leaving him in the back. Someone can charge in a big unit if they're trying to get a smash melee character in. You just kind of save him, and he can shoot that character. Probably 1 wound's going to go through, and it's D3 plus 3 damage on the big gun, so he can just punk a character. He had 2 shielded missile drones with him, because why not? Then I had a big unit of 9 crisis suits, which this was the meat of the army.
Definitely the core.
Yep. So I had 4 guys with 3 fusion blasters each, 3 guys with the iridium suits for 2-up saves, and then 3 airbursts, and then 2 guys with 2 airbursts and shield generator. Now the airburst is D6 shots, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage, but it ignores line of sight and it's blast. But the main thing with these guys is there's a 1 CP stratagem called Command and Control Node. So a commander, usually Farsight, because he has no guns except a plasma rifle, which doesn't do anything. He gives up his shooting. He picks a battlesuit unit within 6, and they reroll failed wound rolls. So now this unit is putting out 13 D6 bolter shots, rerolling wounds, and 12 meltas, rerolling wounds. They're also upgraded with veteran cadre, so they're ballistic skill 3 up, weapon skill 4 up. If they're within 12, they count things as 1 marker light. There's a bunch of ways to get them to hitting on 2s with marker lights. So they were killing probably 300 or 400 points of stuff every time they got to shoot. The only downside is short range. So a lot of the time they wouldn't shoot turn 1, but they would always make up for it by the end of the game.
Yeah, how many points is that unit?
So without the drones, it's about 620, and then I put in 9 drones with them, which bumped it up to 700 for that choice. But it's definitely an expensive unit.
Does well.
Yeah, always makes its points back though. It's really tough to kill. They had the reactive countermeasures, so ignore AP 1 and 2 against range attacks for the airburst guy. Then I had 2 Remoras, which are little Forge World flyers. They're super good for engage on all fronts. They're super good for move blocking because they're aircraft. They're just a pain for the opponents to deal with. They're -1 to hit. They're always in light cover, so they have 2-up saves, and they're 60 points each.
Yeah,
they were always putting in work.
That's the Tau version of the Lictor in terms of like engage, and they're great.
Like Vespid were there for engage and scramblers. Remoras are there for engage. So the list really centered around almost every game. My 3 secondaries were deploy scramblers, engage, and while we stand we fight. And I never got less than 40 secondary points in any of the games.
Wish Tyranids could do that.
Max it out pretty much every time. I guess there was 1 game where I got 35.
Oh no.
Because Scramblers is pretty much guaranteed with the Vespid. They've got Deep Strike. They have a 14-inch move as well. So it's really easy to get your 3 Scrambler points. Then the Breachers can do it in a pinch as well.
Yep.
Engage, also really easy. Tons of things are fast. I have tons of tiny little drone units that can run all over the place. Devilfish, which can just grab engage. And then while we stand, we fight is the Riptide, the Crisis Suits, and my Commander. So 3 things that are very hard to deal with.
Maybe the Commander if you end up having to throw him out there, but...
Yeah, so in all 5 games, I only ever lost 5 on While We Stand, We Fight. I lost the Crisis Suit unit in 1 game against Sisters, but the Riptide never died, and the Commander never died.
Damn.
Yeah, the main thing about the Riptide is you can Nova Charge his thruster so that he gets to move 2d6 in the charge phase. So if there's a big obscuring building, set up the Riptide behind him, scoots out, shoots something, thrusters back right behind it. So he doesn't even take return fire unless it's against like plague burst crawlers. And then you just leave a couple drones next to him, or just buff the shield at that point.
Bringing back a little bit of the jump, shoot, jump.
Yep, just a little bit. Just on that one guy. But that was pretty much the list. It was definitely built around playing secondaries and just getting all 5 turns of shooting with the core of my army.
Making sure it's durable enough to last throughout the game and just get that max efficiency.
Yeah, for sure. And then the breachers were great at scoring primary. Because when you slap a devilfish on objective to take me off of the objective, first the opponent's got to kill the devilfish. Then they've got to kill the breachers. And they also have to kill the 2-man drone unit that pops out of the devilfish, which a lot of the time they can't do. Unless they dedicate a lot of firepower to that. And it's 180 points.
And if you want to kill all 3 of those things, you end up, it's just the amount of firepower you end up having to put into it. You end up not doing anything to the rest of his army. And that's a trade-off I think he's willing to take.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's the devilfish would push up, get on objectives to put the pressure on, and then when the opponent has to come out to deal with them, now I can hit them back with the rest of my army. So round 1 was against Custodes. Normally a pretty tough matchup with the 2 Telemons, just because of the no reroll stratagem. Most of my damage output comes from rerolling hits, rerolling wounds. Mm-hmm. So when I can't do that, and the Crisis Suit is strength 8 on the Meltas, and he can do the -1 damage, they are actually pretty inefficient against Telemons.
Got a bit of a taste of your own medicine
on
that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was one of the tough matchups going in. We ended up having a super close game. I ended up losing by 2 points, 87 to 85, when right before I scored my last primary on turn 5, a devilfish exploded and ended up killing 3 breachers on an objective who were obsecking it away from a Telemon who had just punched the devilfish who was screening the breachers. So that was really unfortunate, but super good guy, great game. Yeah, definitely happy with how the list performed, even into one of the bad matchups. Round 2, I ended up playing Sisters. He had a lot of Meltas.
That's all it was.
That's an understatement. So yeah, he had 3 Retributor squads, all with Meltas. They were all in Immolators. His Immolators did have Heavy Flamers instead of Meltas, which I think he had
branching out a little bit.
So those were actually pretty good. And then he had 3 Exorcists and some characters, and 2 individual Mortifiers and 1 Penitent Engine. And so it was just a lot of firepower. And the table we ended up playing on had very little obscuring terrain. Mm-hmm. There were just 2 pieces kind of offset in the middle of the table. It was Hammer and Anvil deployment. So I ended up deploying on one side. I was able to hide all of my drones behind the obscuring. Nice. Same as my Riptide and the Crisis Suits for turn 1. He ended up going first, which was great for me because I was out of range with my Crisis Suits, so I definitely want him to come closer. He pushed up his Immolators, popped my Devilfish with his Exorcist because they had nowhere to hide and they don't deserve it. But then I was able to just hit him back. The Riptide being able to jump behind the obscuring, fire at an Exorcist, and then jump back behind without getting shot back was huge every time. He was putting a lot of hurt on those Exorcists. And then the Crisis Suits, they did end up dying that game just because they eventually had to come out.
Yeah, and against that much firepower.
Yeah, but I was just able to take the middle, and once I killed his Immolators and his Retributors, he had nothing that could contest the middle objective, so I was just going up on primary. Round 3 was against my friend Kyle, also playing Tau. Funny enough, we had actually played a practice game the day before with the exact same list, so that was fun. Same thing, there were 2 big obscuring buildings, and then it was a lot of dense terrain. So I put my whole army behind the obscuring. He put most of his behind the obscuring. He had a decently similar list. He had the Riptide again. He had 2 units of Crisis Suits, except they both had Flamers, and then he had a big unit of Broadsides. And he did have a lot more drones than me.
Yeah.
So he had about 40, and I had 16, I think. So was definitely key to keep those safe, but that's where the airbursts came in really clutch, because if all his drones were behind that obscuring, I could hop my crisis suits over my obscuring, leave the drones behind it. My crisis suits could target his drones, yet he couldn't shoot my drones back. So I was able to take a lot of hits on my drones between his broadsides and his riptide. And my turn one, I killed all his drones. I actually ended up tying one unit of flamer suits up in melee with breachers who had charged him from out of line of sight, and he was out of range of Monka, so that had taken that unit out of the game for one turn.
That's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And then his other unit eventually made it over the wall and killed all my drones, but by that point, he didn't have enough firepower, and I was able to pick up the rest of his army over the rest of the game.
You did have a clutch Remora.
Yeah, so I had a Remora who charged his broadsides, because the broadsides are not vehicles, so they're not allowed to shoot in melee. He ended up rolling 2 6s on his Overwatch with the heavy rail rifles, which are strength 9, -4, d6 damage, but minimum 3. I had 4 wounds left. And then he rolled 2 wounds. It was -4. I always count as in light cover, so I did 2 up, down to a 6 up, boxcard the save, and then was able to tag his broadsides,
preventing them from shooting.
Yeah, so that was huge. That was definitely a clutch roll right there. But yeah, super good game. Ended up winning that one.
Nice.
So I was 2-1 after day 1.
Yeah, with tons of battle points though.
Yeah,
because his one loss had 85 points in it still.
Yep, and then my other wins were 89 and 100.
Yeah, phenomenal. So then going into day 2, I'm 3-0. He's 2-1. My round 4 opponent was against Death Guard, and I was really excited to see how well the Harriden does against Mortarion, only to then find out my opponent didn't actually take Mortarion.
Disappointing.
So he did have a Typhus with like 30 Poxwalkers just as kind of his screen, and then he had 2 Plague Burst Crawlers and a Leviathan Dread.
Not quite what it was in 8th Ed.
No, still really durable, especially with the -1 damage now.
Yeah.
So basically, my turn 1, we ended up playing on the table quarters with the circle in the middle mission, and my turn, I ended up getting to go first, and the Harriden stayed in the air, basically just flew right behind his screen, right into his deployment zone, right up against his Plague Burst Crawlers, where I was trying to decide, should I go for those or go for the Leviathan Dread? I opted the Leviathan Dread and did the +1 to wound and the +1 damage. He ended up popping smoke, which I guess is now a reactive stratagem. It's no longer in your movement phase, which is pretty cool, because that made it suddenly I'm hitting on 4s, and that actually did make a huge difference, because I ended up doing 12 damage to him, so he was still alive with 2 wounds left. Other than that, I think everything else, I basically just spread out and grabbed all the objectives. I don't think I double moved the Dima Charon, but I didn't even charge anything. I just grabbed all the objectives.
Yeah.
Then his turn, he thought about he ended up shooting at Swarmlord, actually, rather than the Dima Charons or the Harriden. And Swarmlord was just super hot on his invuln saves, ended up living with 5 wounds left. And then my turn, I did 6 wounds to a Plague Burst Crawler. I finished off the Dreadnought. Swarmlord charged in against his Flamer character, and miraculously, he got 5 hits in Overwatch, 5 wounds. I saved most of them, went down to 1 wound left, and managed to kill off that character, but wanted to stop him because he was also the one that makes me fight last. And with him, my opponent had a Hellbrute and the Leviathan Dread, which if I didn't kill, me fighting last, both of those could punch me quite hard. He also had a Demon Prince, which actually no. So that was my turn 1 charge with the Demon Charon. I charged his Demon Prince and managed to kill that. He ended up. What was probably one of the key moments in this game was he had some Plague Marines that deep struck in my deployment zone to do the final deploy scramblers, and then he charged onto the primary objective, because this was the mission where the objectives move and you can take the secondary of hey, control the primary objectives that moved to get 3 or 5 secondary points. So he charged these 5 Plague Marines into my 20 Devourer Gaunts on this objective. I also had 4 Rippers on the same objective behind those Devourer Gaunts, because again, this is a priority objective that I definitely wanted to defend. I did Acid Blood, sorry, Caustic Ichor. Used that stratagem, and because he had used the flail strat to carry damage over, so he actually managed to pick up all 20 Devourer Gaunts. At which point I rolled and got 4 6s, which killed 2 of his Plague Marines, leaving him with 3 guys left on an objective where I had 4 Rippers. So I still got to keep that objective, denying him the priority target secondary and giving me a 15-point primary. So don't forget Caustic Ichor. It's a fun stratagem. I don't use it very often, but basically against a unit like that, where I think they're going to kill all 20 of them, that's when you use it. And then basically the Harriden decided to finally land, and I think he killed both Plague Burst Crawlers and Typhus and the Tallyman that game. So I think that about makes up his points.
Yeah, it was all right.
Oh, and of course the Leviathan Dread. But so ended up winning that one pretty handily, and then finally went into game 5. And this is now top table in the finals. And I'm playing against our teammate who's running Orcs. This was basically a Forge World Titan-off, because he's running 3 kill tanks as well as another Forge World battle wagon. It's just a battle wagon with like a Forge World artillery upgrade. But it does some serious damage. And he had a bunch of other like scrap jets, I think they're called.
Yeah.
He had some scrap jets, a war boss who was super souped up on a bike, as well as commandos to grab secondaries, and a
Mega Dread you always forget about.
Yes, I do. I forgot about it again. I tell him to put it in the list, and then I forget he has it. But so this one we ended up playing the Scouring mission, which I don't think anybody likes that mission because it's really low scoring. And then I was especially going uphill because basically during lunch, the judges pulled me aside and said I needed to take away my battle ready points, which was fair on their part. I just wish they had told me earlier. But basically my Demacarons, they weren't based, and I didn't put a lot of details into them, so like the eyes weren't painted, and it was basically just kind of a 3-color minimum, which they said was not good enough. So I'm now playing 10 points down in the final mission against an army who can very much has a decent chance of killing the Harriden. And this is a mission where nobody scores any points, and I now have to make up a 10-point deficit.
So that 10 is multiplied even more.
Yeah. And then to make it worse, he did end up winning the roll to go first. Thankfully, the kill tank, this was once again on a 4x6 board. So, and because it was Scouring, we had quite a big distance between us, so I was actually able to put the Harriden far enough back that at least his kill tank that had the big shooting gun was out of range, because it's only 36-inch range with a 12-inch move. And I was 49 away from him. I did very intentionally deployed right outside of his range. So because of that, he decided to go after the Demacarons. He put all 3 kill tanks to kill 1 Demacaron, and then the battle wagon rolled its 2d6 shots, got 11, did 9 wounds at 3 damage each. I saved 3 of them on my 5-up invuln, but that's still 18 wounds, and the other Dema just got 1 shot. So lost both Demas turn 1 before I even got to go, and that's normally a sign of kind of impending doom. However, lucked out, and the Harriden flew over, blew up his battle wagon, blew up a scrapjet, both of which exploded.
Literally blew them up
in his deployment zone. And because they exploded, they hurt his other 2 scrapjets, they hurt his war boss, they started putting wounds on his kill tanks, although those just healed with his Grat Riggers. But at least start doing wounds to everything, which then allowed my Devourer Gaunts to actually pick up both of his other scrapjets. I shot 1, and because he had taken 4 wounds from an explosion, was able to kill it with the 60 Devour shots, and then single-minded annihilation, double shoot the other one. I mean, even hitting on 5s, those 60 shots, they only have a 4-up armor save, so I managed to pick up both of them. So my return fire was kill all 3 Scrapajets and his battle wagon, leaving him with essentially just his 3 kill tanks. And I also picked up his Grot take turn 1. I don't even remember how, but I picked it up before I got to do anything because that was going to be it was equipped with a whole bunch of Scorches and some blast weapon, kill cannon, Grot kill guns, a blast weapon that does a lot of wounds to my 20-man Gaunt squad. So I made sure to pick that up so that way I could have the Gaunts, knowing that he'd be left with only kill tanks that would be vastly wasting their massive guns if they're just shooting Gaunts. So on his turn, he finally did first person to really turn and throw everything at the Harriden. He did 13 wounds to it because I was -1 to hit. He actually only started the game with 2 CP because of his 6 CP heavy supreme super heavy detachment. Thank you. So yeah, he only started the game with 2 CP, so he didn't want to use it on like the Daka stratagem. So he only did 13 wounds to the Harriden, and then his Death Dread, which I totally forgot about, deep struck in my deployment zone, charged and killed the Broodlord. So there goes my Feel No Pain for the rest of the game. Then he threw down some commandos to deploy scramblers in the middle, at which point I felt like I was hurting quite a bit because I had Swarmlord left, who I think had 5 wounds at this point, and Gaunts were both tied up between the big mech that just killed the Broodlord and the other Gaunt squad was tied up with his Warboss. And he still has all 3 kill tanks, and my Harriden has taken some damage. He's still above half health, but I basically just have the Harriden and a 5-wound Swarmlord, and everything else is tied up. But because I have Lictors, because I have Rippers, those all then deep struck onto these objectives in this mission that is very hard to get the primary on. Thankfully, one of the objectives I was able to deep strike a Lictor on, and that was actually it was behind the only obscuring piece of terrain. So I got to put a Lictor on a piece of terrain there, and Swarmlord actually turned around to kill off his commandos to try and really deny those scramblers, since I knew I had to deny every point possible from him.
Yep.
And then I deep struck my 4 Lictors, and because the Scouring has such a small deployment zone...
2 Lictors.
Yeah.
17 Lictors.
But because I have such a small deployment zone, I deep struck 4 Rippers in my own deployment zone, and 4 Rippers combined with Swarmlord coming back to kill off those commandos resulted in him not able to deep strike his 2nd unit of commandos in my deployment zone to get that 3rd Scramblers. And then on his turn, he shot everything into the Harriden again, brought it all the way down to only 11 wounds remaining, and then tried to charge it with a kill tank. This is kill tank. The Harriden had just pumped everything into that kill tank, so it only had 4 wounds left, healed up to 5 on his turn. But then he charges the kill tank into the Harriden. I overwatch it, and really the reason he was doing this was just to stop my overwatch for his Warboss, who was now coming over to get my Harriden. I overwatch, I blow up the kill tank, and again, I literally blow it up. He rolls another 6. This is now 3 vehicles that have exploded. And it blows up and kills the Warboss, who had already been wounded by his Scrapjet exploding. So that meant that suddenly his Warboss could no longer charge my Harriden, who only had 11 wounds left.
Yeah.
That gave me 10 points for Titan Slayer, or Titan Hunter. And then my Harriden actually still got to live. And on my next turn, the Harriden flew all the way back to my deployment zone and just killed the Death Dread, as well as his 5 commandos that had been trying to do his last Scramblers. And because of that, all of a sudden now he doesn't get his 10 points for Scramblers, and he only had 2 kill tanks left, both of which were the Giga Shooters, which are 30 shots, but strength 6, AP 2 for 1 damage. And when they're -1 to hit the Harriden who's flying, those last 11 wounds are actually really tough for him to get through. So over the next 2 turns, even though he threw 120 shots at me over 2 turns, he only did 8 wounds. So the Harriden finished the game with 3 wounds left, denying him Titan Hunter, and both of us basically managed to deny the primary that whole game because that mission is really hard to get the primary on. I got one turn where I had 15 primary, and I denied every primary for him. With the Trackstar Lictor, turn 4, bottom of turn 4, I did the Opportunistic Advance as well as Metabolic Overdrive, and the Lictor sprinted 34 inches to contest one of the primary objectives from his kill tank, denying him because it's a hold 2. His other kill tank was sitting on another objective, but he only had one, which denied him that primary. So because of that, he ended up finishing the game with only 7 points from engage on all fronts. And so I did very well in keeping his score low. And I managed to get the 10 for Titan Hunter. Only 3 for... I took a Grind Him Down, thinking I only have 11 units, and hopefully I can kill more than that, which I did on the first turn, and then we tied on kills every single other turn. So I only got 3 for that, but I got 10 for Titan Hunter, and I got 15 primary, and I do not remember what my other secondary was, but...
The Scramblers.
No, I did not take Scramblers because I knew the deployment zone in that mission is so tiny. Normally I take Scramblers. It's Scramblers and engage on every mission and then try and find a third one. Wow, I do not remember what I took, but I think I got like 5 points on it. But yeah, so I ended up winning that game 34-17. That was the final score on the top table. But that did leave me undefeated and the only undefeated player at the end of 5 rounds. So I did end up taking first in the event. But how was your second day?
Second day, my round 4 was also a very tough matchup against Dark Angels. It was a lot of Deathwing, as in only Deathwing.
Oh.
He had 18 Blade Guard veterans. Unit 10 Terminators, Unit 5 Terminators, 2 units of command squads, so just 2 2-man squads. Then a bunch of characters, and 1 big unit of Eradicators. It was a lot of transhuman.
Everywhere.
He's winning on 4s, which I was kind of expecting to play against Dark Angels at least once. So having the command and control node for reroll wounds,
is huge.
Having the commander stratagem for reroll wounds. Was absolutely game-changing. I ended up killing all of the Blade Guard, all but 7 of the Terminators, because he left 1 on a objective on the side. Again, super close game. I ended up winning this one, 87-85.
Oh, wow.
Which on turn 3, I was able to shoot him off of his Stubborn Defiance.
Nice.
So he ended up only scoring 4 points on that instead of the usual 15.
15 kind of guaranteed.
Usual 15. It actually came down really close at the end because my turn 5, I ended up doing 0 wounds with my entire army. The Riptide shot everything into 1 command squad Terminator who was contesting my priority target. So 2 Meltas and 6 shots from the Ion, rerolling 1s to hit and wound. Did 0 wounds. He didn't even have to make a save.
Oh my god.
And then my big Crisis Suit unit, I only lost 1 guy out of it, so I still had 12 Meltas and all the air bursts. The 12 Meltas, again, rerolling wounds, hitting on 3s, reroll 1s for marker lights, inflicted 0 wounds. So he had to take 0 saves from the Meltas and my Riptide. The air burst did manage to pick up his Apothecary, who was hiding behind terrain.
Yeah, that's good.
But I had to charge his Chaplain in the middle of the table with Farsight and my now 8-man Crisis Suit unit with no CP left, so I couldn't do the reroll hits and wounds stratagem for the Crisis Suit. So it was just run in there and try and beat him up. And Farsight stabbed him for 2 damage. The Crisis Suits hit him for 2 more, so put him down to 1 wound. He ended up hitting Farsight back, then Ezekiel ran over and smited Farsight off. So it ended up coming down to, can my Crisis Suits beat up his Chaplain to punch him off the middle objective, which he had OBSEC on because of his banner, and Osa Moment. So they ended up punching him. He failed 1 save. He had no CP. So he died.
Oh, man.
So it's super close, really good game.
Melee Tau, guys.
Yep. Don't mess with it. And then round 5, I played against Death Guard. He had Mortarion, 2 Plague Bridge Crawlers, a Defiler, unit of Plague Marines, and a Rhino with some characters, 2 units of Poxwalkers. I ended up going first. He had deployed Mortarion out of range of my Crisis Suits on turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like 18-inch gun, 8-inch move, they can advance and shoot, so he set up just outside of 34 inches or whatever that max range is.
Yeah.
So I ended up just moving the Crisis Suits onto the middle objective, because again, this was scouring, so the 5 objectives in no man's land. There's the one in the middle that I tagged with 1 Crisis Suit just within 3, put 2 Devilfish on another, put my Riptide on the other side, and all I did on turn 1 was I shot my Riptide into his Mortarion, did Command and Control Node for reroll wounds, put 1 Marker Light on him for reroll hits of 1, and then I had the Velocity Tracker, so hitting on 3s. I think I got 5 hits, 5 wounds. He failed 2 saves, rerolled 1, still failed it. I did 6 damage to him turn 1, which, no, it's not much, but
it's a start.
Yeah, and then Remora's got engaged. His turn, he moved up. I had set up my Crisis Suits on the objective, but still just outside of 24 of Mortarion, so he couldn't attempt to charge on them. So he ended up killing a Remora with Mortarion. His 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, they didn't roll super well. They almost killed 1 Devilfish with their Entropy Cannons, and then their Mortars killed a couple drones, but really not a ton. So I was still looking pretty good. On his turn, after he had killed my Remora, he actually consolidated closer to me. So he was within 18 of 3 of the Melta Suits.
Oh boy.
So I ended up popping Kaya on that turn for reroll failed hit rolls. The 3 Melta Suits, I gave them the reroll wounds. They fired at Mortarion. The Riptide fired at Mortarion and ended up picking him up.
Nice.
And I had actually taken cut off the head in that game.
Oh, nice.
It's Mortarion, so you always
So
want to take
10
cut off
points?
the head. Yep, so 10 points on turn 2. I'd also gotten the 15 primary, which was huge because I was holding the 3. He only had 2.
Okay. Yeah, and again, that's on the Scouring mission, guys, where there's like really hard to get primary.
Yep, and then I killed his Rhino. I killed all the Plague Marines inside. I had actually deep struck a unit of Vespid into the corner, and they charged one of his Plague Burst Crawlers and tied it up for a round of shooting. And I was still on 3 objectives, and he just had no way to shift me off of those 3.
Nice.
He deep struck his Terminators behind me. They tried to charge drones. The Riptide killed 1 in Overwatch, and then he failed his charge with the reroll, and then the Riptide killed the other 2 after. But I ended up scoring 95 in that game because I was just on 3 objectives for the whole game, and there wasn't much he would do.
Nice. So yeah, basically max point in that game.
Yeah.
You did max point.
I
you
missed
scramblers, right?
Cut off the head. I missed 5 on cut off the head.
Okay.
Yeah, I maxed engage and while we stand we fight on that one.
Very nice.
So yeah, I ended up 4-1 with almost 100 more battle points than that. But.
Yep. Keep in mind, I was 50 points down because apparently I was not battle ready. So I did have 50 points less than normal.
Yep.
But yes, he did have almost 100 battle points more than me.
Doesn't matter though.
But
4-1.
yes, 4-1 after that 2-point initial loss.
Yeah, which then I won a game by 2 points, so it all evens out.
Yeah.
Definitely happy with how the list performed, and going to be taking something very similar to Atlantic City and hopefully Bug Eater as well.
Yeah, so definitely was a fun event, and yeah, we are both going to Bug Eater, which is Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha.
So yeah, we'll be going to Omaha in first week of June, and probably be bringing pretty similar lists. And then the week right after that is the Atlantic City Open that we will be going to, probably with pretty similar lists. So hope you guys enjoyed this. We're going to do like a fun round 6 battle report on Thursday where we will play each other. And I'll post a battle report on here because we haven't done that yet, and I really want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you guys can actually see us playing and see how that goes. But the event was great, especially considering they were not actually originally planning on running a GT. It was very last second, and they ended up just getting kind of an event center out in the middle of nowhere. which meant no food, but then they were very kind and actually ordered pizza for all 36 of us. We didn't even have to pay. It was a $30 entry fee. So getting to $30 being a GT with lunch was pretty great. And then the prize support was awesome.
Yep.
I got an Indomitus box as well as like $160 in store credit. I mean, it's store credit, but still, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
And second place, you got...
I think it was 120 in store credit.
So phenomenal considering, 36 players with a $30 entry fee. And then they paid for a venue, paid for lunch, and still gave out phenomenal prize support, as well as a few raffles and stuff from their store, which was pretty cool.
Yep.
So definitely a really fun event.
And the fact that they had 2 weeks really to bump it up from an RTT to a GT, find a venue, find tables, find terrain. For the most part, terrain was fine. There were only a few tables where there was a little bit lack of obscuring.
Yeah, I mean, all the tables were covered in terrain. It was just not necessarily obscuring terrain on probably a third of them. But most of the tables were pretty
every
good.
table had at least 2 pieces of obscuring, so that's enough.
Yeah, no, it was a great event, especially with only 2 weeks notice.
Yes, definitely.
But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a longer one, but first time for me bringing a guest on, and hopefully we get to do that some more. And I will see you guys all in the next video. Thanks.